friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kelsey and I'm here today to do my September wrap-up. This wrap-up is starting off strong. I didn't want to record it. I haven't been wanting to record like sit-down videos in a while, and then I spoke for at least 10 minutes and the camera was not recording. So we're off to a good start. I've definitely been feeling a creator slump these past 2 months. All I want to do is make vlogs and not really make like sit down videos. So this wrap up is definitely coming a little late just because I couldn't bring myself to record this. This month, at least I only have 9 books. So it's not that long. So that's what's keeping me going. And 2 of the books I'm not even going to talk about. So really, we have 7 books to talk about today. So just in regards to statistics, I did read 9 books this month. 1 of those books was a 5-star read. 5 of those books were 4-star reads and 2 of them were 3-star reads. 1 of the books I did not rate. So I didn't rate that book because I read it for work, and of course I liked it because it is a subject matter I do every day. So obviously I enjoy it. And was it helpful? Yes, it was. The average rating for this month was a 3.88, which is great. So I didn't read as many books, but I did read more books than I enjoy usually. The pages read once again falls into an average that I have per month, and I always tend to read around 4,000 pages, and this month it wasn't very different. The total page count came out to 4,301, and that averaged out to about 143 pages per day. In regards to the author identity, I read 4 female authors and 5 male authors, but another caveat for that, which usually happens every month, I tend to read more Brandon Sanderson sometimes in the month, and this month is no exception. I did read 2, so technically I only read 3 male authors. In regards to the books age category, I read 5 adult books and 4 YA books, and then just for the format, I read 3 audiobooks, 1 ebook, and 5 physical books. So let's get into it. So I'm editing this right now. It wouldn't be a me video if I didn't insert myself into myself. But I forgot to mention how these books apply to how I did in the Magical Readathon. So I will be interjecting at the end of every book to talk about what they completed for the Magical Readathon. I did complete it. The Magical Readathon is a readathon hosted by G over at Book Roast, and it basically is like a D&D kind of game where you create your own characters and you have to follow a specific path. And then the second part of this readathon occurs in April, and how you succeeded in this readathon applies to how you're gonna do in the next readathon. The other book I will not be focusing on for this wrap-up is The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson, simply because I did a vlog for it, totally dedicated, only this book, full of spoilers. I will leave a link up above if you want my complete thoughts, but just for the sake of this wrap-up, I did give it 5 stars. I think it was really well done, and I can't wait to continue in the series. For Way of Kings, this completed the prompt of where I'm from, like what province I'm from. So the province I picked was Carador, and this was to read a book from an ongoing series, and Way of Kings completes that. In order to get to The Way of Kings, I did need to complete 1 more novella, and that was Shadows for Silence in the Forests of Hell, also by Brandon Sanderson. This is a really short novella that follows a character named Silence Montaigne who lives in a forest and runs like a kind of bar restaurant there. But the forest is filled with these deadly shadows, and the people who travel through this forest need to follow 3 rules. 1 is to not kindle a flame, 2 is to not shed blood, and 3 is not to run at night, and Silence Montaigne breaks these rules all the time. To me, this was one of Brandon Sanderson's better novellas. It follows a middle-aged woman as a protagonist, and we just love a badass bounty hunter mother. She was definitely one of the most engaging protagonists that I have read in a long time, not just from Brandon Sanderson, but in general in my reading. The novella was also quite different from anything I have read from Brandon Sanderson before. There is no real magic system within the book, and if you know Brandon Sanderson, you know that he develops quite intricate magic systems, and it had more of a horror feel to it, which made it far more interesting than anything I have read before. The way that the spirits, or they're called shades in the book, but the way that the shades were described was so creepy that I was literally scared to be in my apartment. Like, I couldn't look at corners, I couldn't look at shadows, I wanted nothing to see of anything. Obviously, my main complaint about this novella is my complaint with all novellas, that I just wish they were longer. It was so creepy and it perfectly transitioned me into the autumnal time that I just wish there was more of it, because I absolutely adored it. And I ended up giving this novella a 4 stars. For the Magical Readathon, this ended up completing one of the prompts on the novice path, and that was for the Ruin of Sky prompt. So that was to read a book featuring ghosts, haunted house, or supernatural elements. These shades are obviously the supernatural element that I am touching upon. The next book I read was my nonfiction pick for the month, and this was Notes on a Nervous Planet by Matt Haig. So Matt Haig has written several nonfiction books, and they mostly focus on his experience in dealing with specific mental illnesses that he deals with. For this book specifically, he focuses on anxiety, and Notes on a Nervous Planet is basically a look at how Matt Haig journeyed back to happiness and the lessons that he kind of learns along the way. Having read Reasons to Stay Alive, which was Matt Haig's discussion on depression earlier this year, and absolutely loving it, I didn't think that I was going to love this one just as much, but I am here to say that Matt Haig is a talented writer, and I think objectively this one was better written and demonstrated the depth that Haig has in being a nonfiction memoir type of author. As you're reading this, you could really tell the effort that Matt Haig put into the book to make you really understand what he was feeling. I think he has such a way with words that he's really able to capture exactly how someone feels in so few short sentences. As someone who deals with anxiety on the regular, it was pretty accurate to my experience. Like, I found myself nodding along to the audiobook and really enjoying specific passages, especially one that focused on time in particular. And I saw that in a lot of other reviews, people felt the same about this specific portion. Like, time was something that a lot of people clinged to. It was validating and reassuring to know that I'm not the only one who thinks about so little time that I have, or how much time I have to create my life. Overall, it was such an interesting read due to the amount of research that was put into this book, and I would even continue reading this if it was 500 pages. There is just one aspect of the book that does not sit completely right with me. I think Haig's choice of language definitely sticks to the gender binary. He discusses things that happen to women, and then he discusses things that are happening to men, and there's no real osmosis between the two gender expectations, not to mention any gender that occurs outside of this spectrum. I would be more forgiving if this book was written in like the early 2000s, but for something that was published 4 years ago, it definitely made me roll my eyes a lot. So I think this is something to take into consideration if you're not cis or hetero. But other than that, I did enjoy this book, and I gave it a 4 stars as well. So in regards to which magical readathon prompts this completed, it completed another prompt on the novice path, and this was for the Ash Torn Tree. So that's a book that keeps tempting you, or on the top of your TBR. Notes on a Nervous Planet is part of my 2021 nonfiction reads that I need to read by the end of the year. So it's on the top of that TBR. I had also not read it for a previous month, so I needed to complete it in this month. Therefore, it fit the prompt. Then I picked up the next book on my oldest own book TBR. I will leave a link up above to that video. And we have been getting dud after dud every month, and I'm sad to say that this month was no exception. The final 6 follows 2 kids, one named Leo and one named Naomi, as they are chosen to be in the running to be the final 6 that will leave Earth and go to space. Earth is experiencing like erratic climate change, and the humans need to leave in order to find another planet to populate. And so the final 6 are a group of 6 teenagers who will therefore be leaving their families behind in order to travel and discover another planet. So I don't really have much to say about this book. I think the beginning was really posing something interesting, and the discussions around climate change was something that felt really different to me in YA sci-fi. I was so fascinated to see how this would affect the story and how it would affect the overall world building of the book. Besides the fact that it is the catalyst for sending the kids up into space, it really provided no other nuance to the book, which is fine because it is the reason the book happens, but just because I was so into it, I wanted a bit more from it. I would say that this book is really just okay. I think it thrilled me when it was supposed to and made me worry about the characters when it was supposed to, and it had a pretty intriguing ending that I can see why people would want to pick up the second book. That being said, however, I am not really inclined to do so. I think the book focused on a romance too much that I didn't really care about, and the overall plot didn't captivate me or make me want to read more. I think if it focused a lot on climate change, I would have been more inclined to read. But also, there's one aspect of this book that I won't get into because it's definitely a major spoiler. But in the year of our Lord 2021, I could not read this. It made me really uncomfortable due to our current political climate. And I know that that's not Alexandra Manier's fault, but it didn't help. It didn't help. And I ended up giving this a 3-star. I think if you like standard sci-fi YA, you will really enjoy this. So for the magical readathon, this completed part of the prompts for my heritage. So I chose to be an elf, and the prompt for that is moon or stars on the cover. And the final 6, as you saw, has a very bright, shiny, star-filled cover. Next, I received an arc from HCC Frenzy for All the Bodies by Kendara Blake. This is a story that follows a young boy who, in his small Midwestern town, a series of murders start to occur. When a young girl is found at the scene of the murders covered in blood, she soon becomes a target for a bunch of killings that have happened across the Midwest. Mary Catherine Hale wants to recount her story to one person and one person only, a budding young journalist named Michael Henson. He doesn't understand why he's been chosen, but because he is the only person she will confess to, Michael Henson decides to take on the case. So first of all, if you're looking for a creepy read for the fall season, I would definitely recommend this book. The way that Kendara Blake mixes horror and gothic literature and historical fiction into this book is masterful, because I really felt that either I was reading a historical account of a real event that really happened or a gothic horror fiction book. While it takes place in the 1950s, the story is so unsettling and works so well for it to have happened at any time. Like, I felt like it could have been happening now. Mary Catherine Hale is a super interesting antagonist, and I loved that we were viewing this murderess from a teenage boy's eyes. We did fall in love with Mary, and we did believe her. I'm not sure if I would have felt this way had I read it from any other perspective, so I think it really worked. This book also surrounds this idea of vampires and never really confirms whether or not we believe that vampires are real. So if you're looking for like a conclusive ending, you're not going to find it here. But I really enjoy ambiguous endings, so I loved it. And also, like, the last 20 pages or so are so creepy. Oh my god. If this book was already on your radar, I would highly recommend picking it up. If you like Kendara Blake, I think you will really enjoy this, and I gave this a 4 stars. So All These Bodies completed a prompt in the novice path for Obsidian Falls, and this was to read a thriller or a mystery book, which this book definitely was. Next, I was knee-deep in The Way of Kings, and I just needed a palette cleanser, so I decided to pick up My Hero Academia Volume 1, and this is by Kohei Horikoshi. My Hero Academia follows this young boy named Izuku Midoriya, and he just really wants to be a hero. The unfortunate thing is that he does not have a drop of hero's blood in him. As these students start to get competitive as to who is going to be in what program in the hero school, Izuku catches a lucky break when a hero named All Might takes him under his wing. So I immediately became obsessed with this. I had known that a lot of people really enjoyed this series, but I didn't expect for myself to be pulled in by the first volume. I don't normally read shonen, but I have been picking it up much more as of late, and man, does it completely bring me back to elementary school. The manga starts pretty stereotypically, but I really enjoyed this idea or concept of a world filled with superheroes. I really enjoyed the art, and particularly the art of the students at the school. It's cute, and it's really reminiscent of older animes, but I think what I really enjoyed about this manga was the themes of confidence and believing in oneself and becoming a hero even when you don't really have a superpower to back you up. I just loved it, and the way that Izuku handles it, he's such a cinnamon roll. It's so precious and so addictive, and I can't wait to read the next volume. Also, I understand everybody's obsession with Bakugo. I have to say, that little bad boy, he's my fave. And I ended up giving this 4 stars as well. Academia Volume 1 also completed a prompt on the novice path, and that was for the Aurelium Academy. So this, at the end of the readathon, is where we want to end up. So the Aurelium Academy prompt is a book with a school setting. My Hero Academia obviously takes place at a hero academy, so I successfully completed this prompt. Then I read another pretty big book. This is Queen of Air and Darkness by Cassandra Clare. Right off the bat, I'll start by saying that Cassandra Clare's series is really like candy to me. I read it because I know what I'm expecting. I know it's going to be fun, but I'm not really expecting much else anymore from the plot or the development of the characters. Anyways, this is the 3rd and final book in the Dark Artifices series, the first of which was Lady Midnight, and this series follows the Blackthorn kids after the events of the first Shadowhunters series. I won't go into like too much details because I feel like if I explain what this is about, it spoils Lady Midnight. But if I talk about what Lady Midnight is about, it spoils the first Shadowhunter series. So I feel like you wouldn't be interested in this book if you haven't read the other Shadowhunters books. So like I mentioned, I do read these books to feel like comforted, but despite that, this installment had way too much going on. Way too much. I feel like Cassandra Clare was stuck making this series into a trilogy and made this one far too long. The pacing was a wild ride because so much was happening, and the conclusion to this trilogy absolutely needed to happen in this book. So we have just pages and pages and pages and pages of stuff. On top of that, because all these series are interconnected, I feel like this is always my complaint with Cassandra Clare's finales, is that the story like ends here, but then because we have to build up what will be happening in the next trilogy, it just goes on for far too long. It was cool to see the world that is needed for the next installment, but it didn't really add anything to this specific plot. It definitely made me excited for the next series, but I was gonna read it anyway, and I feel like a lot of Cassandra Clare fans would read it anyways, so I just didn't really see what the purpose was of having it. I feel like the ending where a specific doppelganger character comes could have still happened and it would have still been effective. I don't know. The whole ending was very, very messy. It was just a mess. I'm happy I read it, and I'm happy I was back with these characters, but I think this review can be summed up in this book being too long and too messy. So I ended up giving it a 3 stars. Will I continue now to read Chain of Gold? Obviously. Like I said, these books are very comforting to me. Just that this series I felt overall was kind of messy.
So Queen of Air and Darkness helped me for one of my background prompts, and for that I want my elf character to live in an urban setting. So the prompt for that was a book set in a city or town. Queen of Air and Darkness takes place in Los Angeles, so that is definitely a city, and therefore it is completed.
And then the last book I read for the month was a bit more of a joyous one, and I actually managed to finish this, but this is Kingdom of Copper by S.A. Chakraborty. If you don't know what the Devabad trilogy is, it essentially follows a girl named Nari who is able to kind of sense people's health issues or problems that they might have and help them get better. The catch is that not a lot of people can do this in her city of Cairo. One day, Nari accidentally summons a Deva named Dara, who is completely shocked that she's able to do this, and they set out on a mission to enter the city of Brass, where Nari can find out more about herself. If you watched my August wrap-up, you'll know that I enjoyed the first installment, City of Brass, but I still had some issues with it. This was a vast improvement. I really, really flew through this one because unlike the first book, the pacing in this book was immaculate. Sometimes second books in series experience a sort of like slumpiness, but this one did not feel that way whatsoever at any given point. The characters all felt really well developed, and I think part of that is because there are no games that are happening in between them, which was one of my complaints of the first book. They were focused on other things, and it really made their personalities and objectives shine. I went to really not caring about them in the first book to absolutely caring about them. I was on the edge of my seat at the end of every chapter, wondering what was going to happen to them. And speaking of being on the edge of my seat, the last 25% of this book, thankfully, I'm going to be reading The Empire of Gold soon, so I can see how this world ends because I just want to get back into it. I don't think this book is absolutely perfect, like the writing is still a tad juvenile, but nonetheless, this book was miles better than the first one, and I ended up giving this 4 stars.
The final prompt completed for the magical readathon was also in the novice path, and for this I completed the novice path entrance, and that's to read a book with a map in it.
And that's it. These are all the books I read in the month of September. I'm gonna put them down because this is really heavy. So let me know if you have read any of these books. Did you like them? Did you hate them? Let me know down below. I love to talk with people in the comments. If you would like to follow me on any of my other platforms, I do leave a link down below to my Goodreads, Twitter, and Instagram if you would like to follow me there. But that's it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell. It does wonders for my channel and makes me feel really good. But that's it. I hope you're having a great October. I don't know how to end these things, so I guess I will see you next time. Bye!